Those who own the country ought to govern it.
The people are nothing but a great beast.
Government ought to be so constituted as to protect the minority of the opulent against the majority.
The basic idea is to present a picture of the world that looks kind of like this. There's us, kind of like a big happy family in the community. The honest workman going off every morning with his lunchbox, his loyal wife who's making the meals and taking care of the kids, the hard-working executive who's toiling day and night in the interests of his workers in the community, the friendly banker who's running around looking for people to lend money to, and so on and so forth. That's us, and we're all in harmony. Harmony was a big word. We're in harmony, we're all together. It's Americanism. You might take a look at that word Americanism. It's an unusual term. It's the kind of term that you find in totalitarian societies. So like in the Soviet Union, anti-Sovietism was considered the gravest of all crimes, and the Brazilian generals had some concept like that, anti-Brazilian. And then there's those bad guys out there who are trying to disrupt our harmonious lives, like that union organizer is probably a communist or an anarchist anyway, and probably un-American, and is trying to, destroy all these wonderful things we have, and we got to band together and kick him out.
When anybody preaches disunity, tries to pit one of us against the other through class warfare or religious intolerance, that person seeks to rob us of our freedom and destroy our very lives. And we know what to do about it.
We have to defend our way of life against this. A lot of religion gets thrown in. They went after everything, the workplace, schools, churches, even sports leagues were organized. The main purposes, you look through the whole, you look at the movies and that kind of thing, were two big things. One, of course, is to demonize unions, because they are a democratizing force, so you got to get rid of them. They're one of the ways, the main way in which poor people can get together and do something, become participants, not spectators. So they had to be demonized. And the other thing, which is a little more tricky, was to demonize government and to create what's now called a mood of anti-politics. And that's a little tricky because, remember, these guys need a powerful state in order to protect them. That's why Gingrich and the Heritage Foundation want to increase the federal budget. They're not cutting it, they're increasing it, but they're increasing the parts that feed them, like the Pentagon system. That goes up. And the other part of the state security system, the prison system, goes up. Those go up. Everything that goes to people goes down. So you had to create a mood of anti-politics, which leaves a very powerful interventionist state, but makes people hate the federal government. And the reason to make people hate the federal government is it has a defect. It's not that the government isn't bad, but the things that they're worried about are not what's bad. What they're worried about is what's good. The government has a defect, namely it's potentially influenceable by the population. Now, private corporations don't have that defect. There's nothing you can say about the GE management, but you can do something about federal government policies. And that defect, for good Madisonian reasons, has to be gotten rid of. So you have to create a mood of anti-politics where everything is blamed on the federal government, and you don't notice the real power behind it. You're not supposed to read the Fortune 500 issue.
In the barbers' shops were anarchist notices. The barbers were mostly anarchists, solemnly explaining that barbers were no longer slaves. In the streets were coloured posters appealing to prostitutes to stop being prostitutes. The anarchists were still in virtual control of Catalonia, and the revolution was still in full swing. It was the first time that I had ever been in a town where the working class was in the saddle. Every shop and cafe had an inscription saying that it had been collectivized. Even the bootblacks had been collectivized. Waiters and shop workers looked you in the face and treated you as an equal. Servile and even ceremonial forms of speech had temporarily disappeared. Nobody said "Señor" or "Don" or even "Usted." Everyone called everyone else "comrade" and "thou," and said "salud" instead of "buenos dias." You saw very few destitute people and no beggars except the gypsies. Above all, there was a belief in the revolution and the future, a feeling of having suddenly emerged into an era of equality and freedom. Human beings were trying to behave as human beings and not as cogs in the capitalist machine.